The mafia boss asked his son to pick a new mother among 5 rich women, but he chose the nanny. The gates of the Romano estate were black iron, looming 3 times the height of a man, and they opened inward with a low, electric groan. Harper Lane steered her worn hatchback through them, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The gravel drive crunched under her tires, the sound offensively loud in the oppressive quiet of the grounds. The house wasn't a home, it was a statement. Cold, white marble stacked against the Los Angeles skyline, a fortress of glass and stone that absorbed the sunlight without reflecting any of it back. She'd been hired sight unseen, based on a single sterile interview with a stone-faced woman named Mrs. Petrov, the estate manager. A live-in nanny for a 5-year-old boy. The pay was astronomical, the kind of money that could finally, truly buy her freedom from the past. But as she parked her car near a garage that held at least 6 vehicles, each worth more than her entire life, she felt the familiar chill of a gilded cage. Mrs. Petrov met her at the door. "Miss Lane, you are punctual. Hello, please call me Harper." Mrs. Petrov did not return the smile. "Mr. Romano is waiting in his study. Your luggage will be taken to your room. Follow me." The inside of the house was even colder than the outside. The foyer echoed with the click of their shoes on the polished marble. The air was still, smelling faintly of lemon oil and something metallic. There were no photographs, no scattered toys, no sign that a child lived here at all. Dominic Romano did not stand when she entered. He was a shadow behind a desk of dark, gleaming mahogany, a wall of smoked glass behind him, showcasing a city that seemed to belong to him. He was younger than she expected, perhaps in his mid-30s, but he carried the weight of a much older man. His black suit was immaculate, his focus absolute as he signed a document. He finished, capped the pen, and finally looked at her. His eyes were the color of espresso, dark and flat. "Miss Lane," he said. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of inflection. "Mr. Romano, thank you for this opportunity." He inclined his head, a gesture of transaction, not welcome. "My son, Leo, lost his mother 2 years ago. He is quiet. Your duties are simple. Care for him. See to his needs. Keep him occupied. You will answer to Mrs. Petrov for the house, and to me for my son. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." "You are an employee. Miss Lane. Nothing more." The words were not cruel, just factual, a boundary drawn in concrete. "I understand completely," Harper said, though the coldness of the statement made her stomach tighten. "Good, Mrs. Petrov will show you to Leo." He looked back down at his desk, the dismissal absolute. Harper found Leo in the atrium, a vast room with a towering, dormant fountain at its center. He was sitting on a marble bench, his feet dangling 6 inches from the floor, drawing in a sketchbook with a single black crayon. He was a miniature of his father, the same dark hair, the same serious set of the mouth, but where Dominic's eyes were flat, Leo's were hollow. "Hello, Leo," Harper said softly, crouching down so she was at his level. He flinched, his shoulders drawing up to his ears. He did not look at her. He just gripped the crayon tighter. "My name is Harper. I'm going to be staying here with you for a while." She pointed to his drawing. It was a house, the same one they were in, but all the windows were barred, and a small figure lay on the ground outside. "That's a very good drawing," she said. "You're a real artist." Leo looked at her then. Just a glance, his eyes wide and assessing, before he snapped the sketchbook shut and slid off the bench, disappearing down a hallway without a sound. Dominic watched from the second-floor balcony, hidden in the architectural shadows. He had seen a dozen nannies try to engage Leo. They were too loud, too bright, too saccharine. Leo ignored them or hid. This one, Harper Lane, had been quiet. She had not tried to force a smile or bribe him with a toy. She had knelt. He watched her stare down the empty hallway where his son had vanished, her expression not one of frustration, but of a deep, familiar sadness. He turned away, dismissing her. She was an employee. Her effect on his son was irrelevant. As long as she kept him quiet, the bonding was slow. Then all at once, for 3 days. Leo was a phantom. Harper spoke to him knowing he was listening, reading chapters from The Velveteen Rabbit aloud to an empty playroom, hoping he was just outside the door. On the 4th day, she found the dormant garden. It was a forgotten patch behind the pool house, choked with weeds, the soil dry and cracked. She bought supplies with her own money, trowels, gloves, and small bags of fertilizer. She began to work, humming quietly as she pulled the stubborn weeds. She felt him watching. When she turned, Leo was standing by the gate, holding his sketchbook. "It's a secret garden, Harper said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Or it will be, but it needs help. These roses are thirsty." He stayed silent. "I could use a partner," she continued, holding up a small, child-sized glove. "If you want, we could plant strawberries." Leo looked at the glove, then at the dirt, then back at her. He took one step onto the soil, his small shoe sinking slightly. He took the glove. They worked for an hour, not speaking. Harper showed him how to loosen the soil, how to give the drooping rose bushes water. He was meticulous, his small hands packing the dirt with a focused intensity. When they were done, he used his dirty finger to draw a small, wobbly circle in the fresh mud. "What's that?" Harper asked. "A strawberry," he whispered. It was the first word he had ever spoken to her. That night, the screaming started. Harper bolted from her bed, her heart pounding, and ran down the hall to Leo's room. He was sitting bolt upright, his eyes wide open but seeing nothing, his small body drenched in sweat as he gasped for air. No, please," he whimpered, fighting the blankets. Leo, you're safe." Harper sat on the bed, not touching him yet, keeping her voice low and steady. "You're in your room. It's just a dream. You're safe." He thrashed, his hand striking her chin. She absorbed the blow, unfazed. "I've got you," she whispered, gathering him up. He fought her for a moment, a wild, terrified animal, and then he collapsed, his small arms locking around her neck, his body shaking with silent sobs. He cried like a child who had learned that making noise brought the wrong kind of attention. She held him, rocking him, smoothing his damp hair. "It's okay, sweet boy. It's all gone. It was just a bad dream." She sat there until his breathing deepened, until the rigid terror left his limbs. She noticed it then, the absolute absence of a smile. In the week she had been there, through the gardening and the drawing and the quiet stories. He had not smiled, not once. Dominic's life operated on a rigid schedule. Tuesdays were for business, Thursdays were for his son, and Wednesday evenings, Harper learned, were for the candidates. "Mr. Romano is entertaining tonight. Miss Lane. Mrs." Petrov informed her on the 3rd Wednesday of her employment. "You will ensure Leo is fed and settled in the West Wing by 7 o'clock. He's not to disturb the guests." "Guests?" "Mr. Romano's guests." The housekeeper replied, as if that explained everything. Harper fed Leo in the secondary kitchen, a small, sterile room far from the main dining hall. She could hear the arrivals, the sound of expensive laughter, the clinking of glasses, the drift of perfume so strong it stung the air. She was settling Leo with a new puzzle when the first one appeared, a tall blonde in a red dress that looked painted on. "Oh, there he is," the woman cooed, stepping into the playroom. "What a little prince! Dominic said I could come and say hello." Leo froze. He scrambled backward, knocking over the puzzle box, and hid behind Harper's legs, gripping the fabric of her pants. "Don't be shy, darling," the woman said, her smile tightening. She stepped closer. "He's a little tired tonight," Harper said, placing a protective hand on Leo's head. "Nonsense. He just needs waking up." The woman reached for him. Leo let out a choked sob and buried his face hard against Harper. The woman's smile vanished. "Well, I see." She shot Harper a look of pure venom before turning and clicking back down the hall. 4 more followed over the next hour. A brunette who tried to bribe him with a silver-wrapped gift. An older, elegant woman who simply stared at him as if he were a piece of art to be appraised. Each time. Leo reacted with the same visceral fear, clinging to Harper so tightly his fingernails left marks on her skin. He cried silently, tears tracking down his cheeks, his body rigid with a fear that went beyond simple shyness. Harper's heart broke. She held him, rubbing his back, whispering that he was safe, that they were gone. Later that night, after Leo was finally asleep, Harper crept downstairs to get him a glass of water. She passed the study, where the door was slightly ajar. Dominic's voice, low and cold, cut through the silence. "She's too aggressive." Leo recoiled from her. "It presents the wrong image." Another voice, older, smoother. "Dominic, the boy will adapt. This is about the coalition. The Vitali family wants this merger, and a marriage to Isabella secures it. The other families see you as unstable, a widower, alone. They see weakness. You must present a united front, a wife, a stable family." "He's not a pawn," Dominic said, but his voice lacked conviction. "He's your heir," the other man countered. "And he is the key to solidifying your power. Choose one of the five. Dominic, make them a mother. The boy's feelings are secondary to the survival of this organization." Harper backed away, her hand over her mouth. The glass forgotten, a stable family, 5 women, a merger. She felt sick. This wasn't a search for love, it was an auction. And Leo was the prize, a bargaining chip to be bartered for power. She thought of her own childhood, of being moved from home to home, a file in a cabinet, a line item in a budget. She thought of Leo's silent tears, his night terrors, his absolute refusal to smile. She stormed back to her room, her mind made up. She would not be a part of this. She would not stand by and watch another child be treated like furniture. She would pack her bags in the morning. She was drafting her resignation letter in her head when she turned the corner and ran directly into Dominic. He was a wall of muscle and dark wool. He put a hand out to steady her, his grip firm on her upper arm. "Miss Lane, you're still awake." She pulled back, the indignation rising faster than her fear. "They're terrified of you." His eyes narrowed. "What? Leo, he's not quiet. He's terrified. Of you, of this house, of those women you parade in front of him." The words were out before she could stop them. Quiet and shaking with rage, Dominic's face went from neutral to glacial. "I told you your place, Miss Lane. You are an employee. You will not question how I run my house or raise my son. He's not an asset, Mr. Romano. He's a little boy, he's grieving, and you're treating him like a pawn in some business deal." The silence in the hallway was absolute. Dominic stared at her, his expression unreadable, but a dangerous energy radiated from him. He had never been challenged, certainly not by someone he considered staff. He took a step closer, forcing her to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. "You know nothing about my world." "I know about children," she shot back, her voice shaking but firm. "I know what it feels like to be unsafe, to be treated like an inconvenience. I know what it does to you." His anger faltered, replaced by a flicker of curiosity. "And how would you know that?" "I grew up in the foster system, Mr. Romano. I had 12 placements before I was 18. I know what it looks like when a child is shutting down. I know the look of a kid who has learned that no one is coming for them. And that is the look your son has." She was breathing hard, expecting the axe to fall, expecting him to fire her, to have her thrown out. He just watched her, the muscle in his jaw ticking. He saw no tears, no hysteria, just a conviction that ran bone deep. She was not afraid of him, not in the way that mattered. She was afraid for his son, for the first time since his wife's death. Someone was speaking about Leo as a person, not a legacy. He said nothing. He simply turned and walked away, leaving her trembling in the marble hallway. She didn't quit. He didn't fire her. An unspoken truce settled. He watched her more closely, his gaze lingering when she and Leo were in the garden, their heads bent together over the new strawberry plants. He saw his son laugh, a small, breathy sound, but a laugh, when Harper tripped over the watering can. Dominic felt something shift, a tightening in his chest he had long mistaken for grief, but which now felt like something else entirely. Admiration. A week later, he came home late. Harper was in the main kitchen, the insomnia that plagued her since childhood keeping her awake. She was reading under the dim hood light when the side door opened. Dominic stumbled in, leaning heavily against the door frame. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt ripped at the collar and stained dark down one sleeve. Blood. Harper gasped, dropping her book. "Go to bed, Miss Lane," he growled, his voice strained. "You're bleeding." She was already moving, grabbing a clean dish towel. "It's nothing." He tried to wave her off, but a wave of dizziness made him grip the counter. His right hand was a ruin of split knuckles and deep abrasions. "That's not nothing," she said, her nanny voice taking over, firm and calm. "Sit down now." To her shock, he did. He slumped into a kitchen chair, his head falling back against the wall, his eyes closing. The business meeting had clearly been a violent one. She returned with the first aid kit, Mrs. Petrov kept under the sink. She knelt in front of him, the towel in her hand. "This might sting," she said. She poured antiseptic onto the cloth, her movements efficient. He opened his eyes as she touched him. Her hands were small and warm, enveloping his. She began to clean the wounds, her touch incredibly gentle, wiping away the blood and grit from his knuckles. He was used to pain. He lived with it. But this was different. Her touch was not clinical, like a doctor's, or fawning, like a lover's. It was just not care. He watched her. The focused frown on her face, the way she bit her lip as she worked. She smelled like soap and the faint, sweet scent of the garden's soil. His world was made of steel, gunfire, and betrayal. Her world was strawberries and bedtime stories. She finished cleaning the cuts, her thumb brushing over his palm. His hand, which had ended lives, was resting in hers as if it belonged there. The touch lingered. A current passed between them, silent and electric. Her gaze lifted, meeting his. The air thickened. He saw her pupils dilate. He saw the exact moment her breath hitched. She pulled her hand away as if burned, her face flushing. "You'll need stitches for the cut above your eye," she said, her voice suddenly breathy. "It will wait," he said, his voice rough. She stood abruptly. "Good night, Mr. Romano. Harper." She paused at the door, her back to him. "Thank you," she nodded, not turning around, and fled. The following Saturday was warm. Harper had taken Leo to the garden, which was now showing vibrant patches of green. Leo was drawing in his sketchbook, lying on his stomach in the grass. He was drawing his new favorite subject, a smiling woman with brown hair, holding the hand of a small boy. Next to them, he had planted 2 strawberry stickers. "Look," he said, holding it up. "Leo, that's beautiful. Is that us?" He nodded, his dark eyes bright. He pointed to the woman in the picture. "Mama," he said, his voice soft and clear. Harper's heart stopped. She knelt, taking his small hand. "Oh, sweetie, that's so lovely. But my name is Harper. You know that." "Mama," he repeated, not with confusion, but with certainty. He tapped her chest. "My mama. Leo, She didn't know what to say, how to correct him without breaking the fragile trust they had built. She didn't have to. "Let him." Harper turned. Dominic was standing on the patio, dressed down in jeans and a dark shirt. She hadn't heard him approach. His hands were in his pockets, his gaze fixed on his son. "Mr. Romano, I didn't know what to say. I didn't encourage it." "I know," he said, walking toward them. He stopped a few feet away, looking at the drawing. He crouched down, his expression uncharacteristically soft as he looked at his son. Leo, seeing his father, did not flinch. He did not hide. He held the drawing up for him to see. Dominic studied the crayon figures, the smiling woman, the boy. He looked at Harper, her face pale with worry, and then back at the drawing. He reached out and brushed a leaf from Leo's hair. He said nothing. He just looked at the picture, and for a fleeting second, Harper thought she saw the ice in his eyes begin to thaw. The instruction for the trip came on a Friday, delivered by Mrs. Petrov. "Mr. Romano has arranged a weekend at the mountain estate in Lake Arrowhead. You will pack for yourself and for Leo. The The cars leave at 10:00 hours tomorrow." "The Mountain Estate?" Harper asked, pausing in the act of wiping down the playroom table. "Just Mr. Romano and Leo?" "Mrs." Petrov's expression soured, as if she had tasted something unpleasant. "Mr. Romano," she said, emphasizing the name, "will be hosting guests, the 5 ladies you have previously seen on Wednesday evenings. It is a bonding trip." A cold dread settled in Harper's stomach. A bonding trip. She looked at Leo, who was carefully coloring a picture of their strawberry patch. He was finally sleeping through the night. He was smiling, real smiles that reached his dark, expressive eyes. Now his father was going to throw him back into the ring, a prize to be won by the most charming predator. The drive up the winding mountain roads was tense. Harper and Leo rode in one of 3 black SUVs, the other 2 carrying the women. They had arrived at the house within minutes of each other, dressed in casual clothing that likely cost more than Harper's car. They appraised her presence, the nanny, being brought along, with a mixture of pity and disdain. The Mountain Estate was nothing like the Los Angeles fortress. This was a cabin. If a cabin could be described as a 10,000 square foot marvel of timber and glass perched on a cliffside, it was vast, but the roaring stone fireplace, the plush rugs, and the scent of pine gave it a warmth the city house desperately lacked. The women immediately began their campaign. Within an hour of arriving, a small mountain of gifts appeared in the great room. "Leo, darling, this is from Milan," cooed Isabella Vitale, the brunette who seemed to be the front runner. She presented a box containing a miniature, fully functional Ferrari, its red paint gleaming. "I thought you might prefer something educational," said a blonde woman named Catherine, offering a tablet computer preloaded with applications designed to teach 5-year-olds coding. Leo looked at the pile of expensive, flashing, noisy toys. He looked at the 5 women, their painted smiles wide and expectant, his own smile. The new, fragile thing Harper had worked so hard to nurture vanished. He took a step back, then another, until his back hit Harper's legs. He said nothing. He just reached behind him and fumbled for her hand. "He's just overwhelmed," Harper said quietly, giving his hand a squeeze. "He seems difficult," commented Vanessa, a striking redhead who had been observing the scene from the bar, a glass of wine already in her hand. "He's just a little boy," Harper said, her voice firmer than she intended. Leo tugged on her hand. He pulled her toward the massive windows overlooking the pine forest and pointed. "Bird," he whispered, spotting a blue jay on a branch. He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a smooth, gray rock he had picked up on the driveway. He pressed it into her palm. "A treasure. It's the best treasure I've ever seen." "Leo," she whispered back, closing her hand around the simple, cold stone. From across the room, Dominic watched. He stood by the fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, his expression unreadable. He had seen his son's face close up, the light extinguishing as the women presented their offerings. He had seen him retreat to the nanny. He had seen the quiet, genuine exchange over the rock. This weekend was his advisor's idea. A chance for Leo to acclimate, for one of the women to forge a bond. It was a strategic, necessary move. Yet, watching Harper kneel by the window, her head bent close to his son's as they discussed a bird, Dominic felt a sharp, inconvenient conflict. Harper possessed a quiet gravity. She did not try. She simply was. And Leo, who had been a ghost in his own home, orbited her as if she were the sun. Dominic found his own gaze drifting to her more often than he was comfortable with. He noted the way she moved, with an economy of motion, no wasted gestures. He noted the way she listened, her head tilted, giving his son her complete, undivided attention. He was fascinated by her effect on Leo, and deeply, profoundly conflicted by his own growing attraction. It was a complication he did not need. The tension simmered. Peaking the next morning, Harper was in the cavernous kitchen navigating the high-end espresso machine to make herself a simple cup of coffee. The 5 women were at the massive dining table, picking at fruit, their conversation a low buzz of names and places Harper had only read about. Vanessa entered the kitchen, her silk robe whispering against the stone floor. She walked directly to the espresso machine, ignoring Harper. "You're the help," Vanessa said, her voice casual, as if commenting on the weather. She poured herself a cup, her back to Harper. "You do well to remember that." Harper stiffened, her hand tightening on her warm mug. She did not reply. Vanessa turned, leaning a hip against the counter. Her eyes, a sharp, clear green, raked over Harper's simple sweater and jeans. "I see the way you look at him, and the way he looks at you. This little charade of yours, the doting mother figure, it ends. Dominic needs a wife, not a new maid. I am Leo's nanny, Miss Hale. That's all. Good, then know your place." Vanessa's smile was a thin, cruel line. "Because when I am mistress of this house, your services will no longer be required." "Excuse me," Harper said. Her voice was low and steady. She held Vanessa's gaze for a single, long second. There was no fear in her eyes, only a quiet, solid dignity. She walked out of the kitchen, leaving Vanessa standing alone. Dominic, who had been standing in the adjoining hallway, had heard every word. He had seen Vanessa's calculated cruelty and Harper's unshakable composure. He respected strength. He found, to his surprise, that he despised the weakness Vanessa had just shown. The bonding hike was set for 11. The women emerged in brand new, designer hiking boots and immaculate athletic wear. Smelling of expensive sunscreen, Harper had dressed Leo in sturdy pants and put his own small hiking boots on, and she wore a practical pair of worn-in Merrells. The trail was wide and sloped gently. For half an hour, it was fine. The women spoke loudly, their voices carrying in the clean air. Leo, however, was enchanted. He ran ahead, pointing out moss, strange fungi, and the tracks of a deer. Harper stayed with him, reminding him to stay on the path. "Look, Harper, a blue one!" Leo shouted. Spotting a large, iridescent butterfly, it fluttered off the path, dipping down a short, steep embankment. "Leo, no!" Harper called out, but he was too fast, too excited. He darted after it, his small feet losing purchase on the loose gravel at the trail's edge. He vanished. "Oh my God!" Isabella screamed. "Where did he go?" Catherine cried, backing away from the edge. Vanessa just swore, crossing her arms. "The boy is a liability." Dominic, who had been walking a few yards behind, was at the edge in 3 long strides, but Harper was already gone. She hadn't hesitated, had not even made a sound. She had dropped her small pack and slid down the embankment, her hands digging into the dirt and roots to control her descent. It was a shallow ravine, perhaps 15 feet deep, but the sides were steep and covered in loose scree. She found Leo at the bottom, wedged against a fallen log. He was crying, not from pain, but from shock. "You're okay," she said, her voice astonishingly calm as she slid the last few feet. She checked his arms, his legs, her hands moving with practiced speed. "You're okay, sweet boy. You just got a little dirty." "Harper," he sobbed, clinging to her. "I know, it was scary, but we're going to go right back up." She stood, lifting him easily. "You're going to be my little monkey. Hold on tight." She started the climb, Leo clinging to her back. She found footholds, her hiking boots gripping the rock. She pushed Leo up the last 3 feet into the waiting arms of his father, who hauled him onto the path. "You're all right," Dominic said, his voice rough, his hands checking his son with a frantic energy. Harper reached for the top, her hand grasping a root. As she put her weight on her right foot to push herself up, the loose gravel gave way, her ankle twisted sideways with a sickening pop. She bit back a scream, a sharp, white-hot pain shooting up her leg. She collapsed back against the dirt wall, her face pale. Dominic had Leo. He turned back, his face a mask of stone. He looked down at her, seeing the pain she was trying to hide. He reached down, his large hands grasping her under the arms, and pulled her up from the ravine as if she weighed nothing. He set her on the path. She tried to put her foot down and nearly fainted, a choked gasp escaping her. The other women just stared. "My ankle," she whispered, leaning against a tree. "I think I sprained it." Dominic did not speak. He looked at the women, his eyes black and cold. He looked at his son, who was now crying for Harper. Then he looked at her. He scooped her into his arms. "Mr. Romano," "No, I can walk," she protested, her face flaming red. Her hands instinctively flew to his shoulders. "Be quiet, Harper," he commanded, his voice low. He turned and began walking back to the cabin, his long, powerful stride steady on the uneven path. Leo ran alongside him, holding the hem of Harper's sweater. The mile-long walk was completed in absolute, stunned silence. The women trailed behind, their expensive hike ruined, their expressions a mixture of fury and disbelief. Dominic never faltered. He held her against his chest, his gaze fixed forward, acutely aware of her light weight, the warmth of her body, and the scent of pine and clean soap that clung to her. He had carried his wife once, in the final days. This felt different. This felt like carrying something he was afraid to drop, not something he had already lost. That night, the great room was subdued. The women drank wine and spoke in hushed, angry tones, pointedly ignoring the couch where Harper sat, her ankle propped on a pillow, wrapped in a thick bandage. She was trying to read, but the throbbing in her ankle was insistent. Leo had refused to leave her, curled up asleep at her side, his sketchbook clutched in his hand. The fire crackled. The women eventually went to their rooms, casting dark looks at her as they left. The house fell silent. Save for the wind outside, she must have dozed. When she opened her eyes, Dominic was there. He had traded his hiking clothes for a dark sweater and jeans. He was holding a glass of water, 2 white pills, and a fresh ice pack. He knelt in front of the couch, placing the items on the coffee table. The movement was fluid, powerful. It put his face level with hers. "How is it?" he asked. His voice was quiet, stripped of its usual command. "It's fine. Just a sprain." She sat up straighter, which woke Leo. "Mama," Leo mumbled, his eyes blurry with sleep. "It's okay, sweetie. Go back to sleep." Dominic watched his son settle, his gaze softening. He picked up the ice pack. "May I?" She nodded. He gently lifted her leg and began to re-wrap the ice pack, his large, scarred hands surprisingly tender. "Where did you learn to be that calm?" he asked, not looking at her, his focus on the bandage. "Today, on the trail. You didn't panic, you just moved." Harper was quiet for a moment. The warmth of his hands radiated through the cold pack. "Panic is a luxury," she said, her voice soft. "You can't think when you're panicking. You just freeze, and freezing is dangerous." He looked up, his dark eyes searching hers. "Dangerous?" She gave a small, humorless laugh. I had a boyfriend before, a long time ago." She looked away, toward the fire. "He was not a kind man. He had a temper. I learned to be very still, to think my way out, not to feel my way out. I learned to survive him. And when I finally left, I had nothing. $20 and a bus ticket. I built my life from nothing. Mr. Romano. And I promised myself I would never, ever be that helpless again." She had not meant to say that much. It was the painkillers, the fire, the quiet of the house. Dominic stopped wrapping her ankle. He just knelt there, watching her. A strange, new expression on his face. He saw her, not the nanny, not the help. He saw a survivor. He saw a strength that was forged in a fire different from his own, but just as hot. His hand, which was resting on her calf, moved. His thumb brushed the skin just above the bandage. It was a simple, absent-minded gesture, but it sent a bolt of lightning through her. His gaze moved from her ankle to her face. He saw the faint shadows under her eyes, the strength in her jaw, the vulnerability in her mouth. "You are not like them, Harper," he said, his voice a low, rough gravel. He reached up, his other hand cupping her jaw. His thumb, rough from calluses, brushed her cheek. The gesture was impossibly tender. He leaned in, his eyes never leaving hers. She met him halfway, her breath catching, her eyes closing. This was insane. He was her boss. He was a mafia boss. He was Dominic. Their lips were a breath apart, the air between them thick and hot. Her eyes snapped open. Fear, not of him, but of the chasm she was about to fall into. Fear of being used, of being another decoration, of being broken by a man with more power than she could comprehend. She pulled back, a small gasp escaping her. "I can't, Mr. Romano, please, I'm your employee." The word was a shield, a bucket of ice water. Dominic's expression hardened. He did not look angry. He looked pained. He slowly retracted his hand, his gaze unblinking. He stood, the warmth and intimacy of the moment shattering. "Get some rest, Miss Lane," he said. His voice once again flat and cold. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving her trembling by the fire. Later that night, Harper lay awake in her small guest room, her ankle throbbing, her mind racing. The door creaked open, a small sliver of hallway light cutting the darkness. She sat up, her heart pounding. Leo padded into the room, his small feet silent on the thick rug. He was clutching his sketchbook. "Leo, what's wrong, sweetie? Is it a bad dream?" He said nothing. He just climbed into the bed, burrowing under the covers, and pressed his small, cold body against her side. She wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. He pressed his face into her shirt, his small voice muffled by the fabric. "I want you to be my real mommy." Harper's eyes closed, a single tear slipping from the corner of her eye and tracking down her temple. She hugged him tightly. "Oh, Leo," she whispered. In the shadows of the open doorway, Dominic stood. He had come to check on her, to apologize, he didn't know what. He had heard his son's words. He watched Harper hug his child, her face a mask of love and pain. He saw the two of them, the woman who had breached his walls and the child who held his heart, clinging to each other. His own heart, a cold, dead thing for 2 long years, felt like it was being torn in two. He stood in the darkness, a silent, heartbroken ghost. The next morning, the mountain cabin was thick with a silence colder than the alpine air. The 5 women ate breakfast without a word, their faces brittle. Dominic appeared at 8 o'clock, dressed not for another hike, but for departure. "The cars will be ready in 30 minutes, he announced to the room, his voice void of apology. "My plans have changed. The weekend is over." Isabella Vitale, the brunette whose family was key to the merger, stood. "Dominic, what is this? We had an understanding." "The understanding was flawed," he said, turning to look at her. His gaze was flat. "There will be no arrangement, no marriage. I am taking my son home." The women were stunned, their polite facades crumbling into undisguised fury. Vanessa, the redhead, merely sipped her coffee, a look of calculating hatred in her eyes as she stared at the closed door of Harper's room. The drive back down the mountain was as quiet as the drive up had been tense. Harper sat with Leo, her bandaged ankle propped on the seat. Dominic rode in the lead car, alone. The parade of candidates followed, a funeral procession for a merger that had died on the mountain. That evening, in the cold marble fortress of the Los Angeles estate, the consequences began. Dominic stood in his study, staring at the city lights, as his chief advisor, a man named Sal, vibrated with contained rage. "You have insulted 5 families, Sal said, his voice a low growl. "You have undone 6 months of negotiations. You are showing weakness. Dominic, they will see this whim as instability. They will question your leadership." "My leadership is not in question," Dominic said, turning from the window. "It is." Sal slammed his hand on the mahogany desk. "A leader is rational. He makes sacrifices for the good of the familia. This is sentiment. It is foolish. You needed a wife to present a stable front. Now, you have made enemies. Then I will deal with them as enemies," Dominic replied, his voice dropping to the dangerous rumble Harper had heard before. "The plan is over, Sal. I will not have my son paraded like livestock. I will not bind my house to women who see him as an accessory. Find another way to secure the coalition. This discussion is finished." Sal stared at his boss, seeing a resolve he had not seen since Dominic's wife died. It was not the coldness of grief. It was the heat of a new, unfamiliar conviction. He left the study, the door closing with a heavy, final click. Harper felt the shift immediately. She had overstepped. She had revealed her past, she had almost kissed her employer, and she had become the focus of his attention. She was terrified. She was the help, as Vanessa had so clearly reminded her. Help was disposable. She retreated. Her ankle healed, and she used it as an excuse to stay confined to the West Wing with Leo. She became a ghost, just as Leo had been. She was polite, efficient, and utterly invisible. She ate her meals with Leo in the small kitchen. She did not enter the garden if Dominic was home. She kept her eyes down, her voice professional. Yes, Mr. Romano. No, Mr. Romano. She was trying to put herself back in the box he had defined for her. You are an employee, nothing more. But Dominic, having just detonated his professional life for reasons he himself did not fully understand, refused to let her. It started at breakfast. He always took his coffee and toast in his study at 6. On Tuesday, he walked into the playroom at 7:30, where Harper was helping Leo build a tower of blocks. Mr. Romano, Harper said, standing abruptly, her face pale. Harper, he said, a simple greeting. Leo. Leo beamed. Papa, look, a castle. Dominic looked at the uneven tower, then at Harper, who was frozen by the door. It needs a foundation, he said. He sat on the floor, a man who ran the Los Angeles underworld, sitting on a primary-colored playmat, and repositioned the base blocks. Harper watched, her heart a trip hammer in her chest. He stayed for 20 minutes. The next day, he came again. He began joining them for breakfast in the small kitchen. The three of them crowded around a table meant for staff. The tension was so thick, Harper could barely swallow her toast. But Leo flourished. He chattered, telling his father about the strawberries, about the blue jay, about the book Harper was reading to him. Dominic listened, his gaze often drifting to Harper, who stared intently at her plate. He found other excuses. Leo had piano practice, a mundane task handled by a tutor twice a week. One afternoon, Dominic entered the grand music room. The tutor, a nervous young man, visibly paled. His posture is wrong, Dominic said, his voice echoing in the vaulted room. He walked over to the bench, gently placing his large hands on Leo's shoulders. Sit up straight, your wrists, curved, like this. He demonstrated, his own fingers, scarred and powerful, moving over the keys in a complex, melancholic melody. Harper stood in the doorway, listening. The music was beautiful, filled with a profound sadness. You play, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He stopped, his hands hovering over the ivory. I was taught. My father believed his heir should be cultured. He said the word with a deep, biting cynicism. He started spending quiet afternoons with them. He would sit in the garden while she and Leo tended the plants, reading financial reports. But she felt his eyes on her. The silence between them grew. But it was no longer the silence of an employer and employee. It was a weighted silence, filled with the unsaid things from the mountain cabin. One night, she was in the library, looking for a new book for Leo. Dominic found her there. He is different since you came, Dominic said from the doorway. Harper turned, her hand on a leather-bound copy of Treasure Island. He's a wonderful boy, Mr. Romano. He just needed to be heard. I did not know how. Dominic admitted. He walked into the room, stopping a few feet from her. His mother, Elena, she was all light. She knew this life, the world I was part of, but she refused to let it touch her. Or Leo. When she got sick, that light just faded. And when she was gone, I thought the only way to protect him was to build walls, to make him strong. Like my father made me. Harper listened, her heart aching for the cold little boy he must have been. I grew up in this house, he said, gesturing to the opulent room. It was never a home. It was a headquarters, a place where my father held court. Children were to be silent. Emotions were a liability. He looked at her, his dark eyes raw. I have regrets that I let my son be alone for so long, that I thought strength meant coldness. It doesn't, she whispered. Strength it's what you did on the trail. It's climbing down to get him. It's holding him when he's scared. It's being calm when the world is falling apart. He looked at her, truly seeing the scars she didn't show. Like you, he said. The next evening, Leo made his demand. I want a family movie, a real one, with popcorn. What's a real family movie? Harper asked, smiling. With you, Leo said, pointing at her. And Papa. He pointed at Dominic, who had just walked in. Dominic looked at Harper, a silent question. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. They found themselves in the mansion's private theater, a room of dark velvet and plush seating. Harper sat on one end of a massive sofa, Dominic on the other. Leo, victorious, sat between them, a large bowl of popcorn in his lap. The movie was an animated film about a lost fish. It was bright and loud and simple. Leo, nestled between the two adults who formed his entire world, fell asleep before the fish was even halfway home, his head lolling onto Harper's lap. Harper continued to watch the film, her hand resting on Leo's back. The tension of the last few weeks, the fear, the exhaustion, it all settled on her. Her eyelids grew heavy. The film's score faded, her breathing deepened, and her head drifted, finally coming to rest on the solid, warm mass of Dominic's shoulder. She was asleep in seconds. Dominic went rigid. He looked down. Her hair, smelling faintly of the strawberries from the garden, tickled his chin. Her face was relaxed. All the fear and worry smoothed away in sleep. She looked young and heartbreakingly vulnerable. His arm was trapped, his shoulder her pillow. He could have moved. He could have woken her, told her to go to her room. He did not. He sat in the dark theater for over an hour, long after the credits rolled and the screen went black. He just sat, breathing in her scent, guarding her sleep. He felt a profound, aching sense of peace. It was a feeling he had not had in years. It was a feeling that terrified him. A few days later, the invitation came. Harper. He had stopped calling her Miss Lane. He found her in the garden, tying up a tomato plant. I would like you to join me for dinner tonight. She froze. Mr. Romano, I don't think... It is not a request from your employer, he said, his voice low, cutting off her refusal. It is a request from me, just dinner, here. After Leo is asleep, she looked at him, at the sincerity in his dark eyes, the absence of command. Okay, she said, her voice small. She agonized over what to wear. She owned nothing suitable for dinner with a millionaire. She settled on her only dress, a simple navy blue cotton sundress with a modest neckline. She brushed her hair until it shone, applied a touch of mascara, and nothing else. She walked down the main staircase at 8. He was waiting at the bottom, not in his usual immaculate suit, but in dark trousers and a crisp white button-down shirt. The sleeves rolled to his forearms. He watched her descend. His gaze was not the flat, assessing look of an employer. It was the gaze of a man. It lingered on her face, her hair, her bare arms. It was warm, appreciative, and it made her skin heat. You look beautiful. Harper, he said. He led her to the formal dining room, which she had only ever seen from the hallway, but it was not set for a state dinner. A small table for two was arranged near the massive windows. Candles lit, the city lights twinkling below. They ate. The food was incredible, but Harper barely tasted it. The conversation was stilted at first, polite. They talked about Leo, about the garden, but as the wine warmed her and his quiet attention relaxed her, she found herself talking about the foster home where she had learned to garden, about her dream of one day opening a community center. He listened, truly listened, asking questions, his focus entirely on her. After dinner, he stood. I found something, in the music room. He walked over to an old-fashioned turntable, a relic from his father's time. He put a record on. The crackle filled the room, followed by the slow, mournful sound of a cello. He held out his hand. May I? Her heart hammered. She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and firm. He led her to the open marble floor, his other hand settling on the small of her back. He was a good dancer. He moved with a fluid, confident grace that was at odds with his powerful build. She followed his lead, her body moving with his as if they had done this 100 times. His hand on her back was a steady, warm pressure, holding her close. The distance between them was respectable, but she could feel the heat radiating from his body. They danced in silence, the music and the city lights washing over them. He stopped moving, but he did not let her go. They stood in the middle of the room, swaying slightly. He lifted his free hand, his gaze intense, and brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, his calloused thumb tracing her jawline. "You make this house feel like a home again," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't name. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. His lips met hers. It was not the brief, almost kiss on the mountain. This was deliberate. It was slow, tender, and deep. It was a kiss of profound gratitude, of a loneliness so deep it was a cavern. It held all the unsaid words, all the shared glances, all the quiet mornings. Harper's hands, which had been resting on his shoulders, moved. One hand tangled in the thick hair at the nape of his neck, the other flattened against his chest, feeling the heavy, steady beat of his heart. She kissed him back, a lifetime of her own loneliness pouring into the gesture. The kiss deepened, the tenderness giving way to a nascent, hungry passion. His hand on her back tightened, pulling her flush against him. He was hard muscle and heat, and she melted into him. This was what she had been terrified of, and it felt right. It felt like coming home. That was the thought that broke the spell. Home. This was not her home. This was his fortress. He was a mafia boss. She was the nanny. She pulled back, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her lips swollen, her eyes wide with fear. "I can't." He looked bewildered, his own breathing unsteady. "Harper, no," she said, taking a step back, the cold air hitting her. "I can't. I'm afraid of me." The idea seemed to genuinely confuse him. "I'm afraid of this," she said, gesturing between them. "I'm not like them. Dominic, the women from the mountain. I'm not a decoration. I can't be used and then discarded when you find someone more suitable. Someone from your world. It would break me. I've worked so hard to build a life. Please don't do this if I'm just another acquisition." She was trembling, her confession hanging in the opulent room. Dominic's face, which had been open and warm, shuddered. The mask of the boss slid back into place. He said nothing for a long, terrible moment. He just looked at her, his expression unreadable. He gave a single, sharp nod. "Good night, Harper." He turned and walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the dying music and the cold city lights. He did not go to bed. He went to his study. He sat at his desk, staring at the phone. He understood her fear. He had seen her strength, but he had also seen her fragility. He had just promised her, with that kiss, that he would protect her, and she had told him she didn't believe he would. He picked up the phone and dialed a number. "It's me. I want a full, deep-dive background check on Harper Lane. Everything. I want to know every person she's ever known, every place she's ever lived. I need to know exactly what I am protecting her from." He hung up. He knew he had just broken her trust, but to protect her, he needed to know her secrets. The file arrived just before dawn. He read it under the green glow of his desk lamp, the string of foster homes, the scholarships, and then the name. Mark Jennings, the ex-boyfriend, the restraining order filed 5 years ago. The charges, aggravated assault, battery, the 2-year prison sentence. He checked the final page. Released. 3 weeks ago. Dominic's blood ran cold. He now understood her fear of being used, of being broken. She already had been. Meanwhile, across town, in a high-end bar in Beverly Hills, Vanessa Hale swirled the last of her martini. She had spent a week pulling strings, making calls, using her family's less-than-legal resources. She finally had a number. She scrolled through her phone, a vicious smile on her face. She had found him. Mark Jennings. She dialed. "Mr. Jennings, my name is Vanessa. I hear you're looking for your old girlfriend, Harper. Yes, that one. Well, I know where she is, and I think you and I can help each other. The fragile peace shattered 3 days after the dance. After that night, Harper had retreated so far into herself she was barely a whisper in the house. She avoided the main dining room, took her meals with Leo, and spoke to Dominic only in clipped, professional tones. She had exposed her fear, her vulnerability, and he had closed himself off in return. The warmth of that night had been replaced by a familiar, sterile cold. She'd been right to be afraid. She was the help, and she had forgotten her place. The note arrived with the morning mail. A junior maid, new to the house, brought a small stack of letters to the breakfast nook where Harper was watching Leo draw. "This one just says Nanny," the maid offered, holding out a cheap white envelope. Harper's name was not on it. A chill, sharp and immediate, traced its way down her spine. She took it. The paper was thin, the single word written in an unfamiliar, spiky block script. She waited until the maid left, then slid it open with a butter knife. There was one folded piece of paper inside. "I see you. Annie, playing house in your glass castle." "You think you're safe? You'll never be safe from me." "Annie?" The world tilted. The air in her lungs turned to ice. Only one person had ever called her that. A name he used like a brand, a word he spat when he was angry, which was always Mark. Her vision tunneled. The sound of Leo humming, the clink of his crayons, it all faded into a distant roar. He was here. After 5 years, he had found her. The past she had run from, the one she had confessed to Dominic, was not just a memory. It was outside the gates. She folded the note, her hands shaking so violently she could barely grip the paper. She shoved it into the pocket of her jeans. "Harper, your hands are doing the shaky shake," Leo said, looking up from his drawing. "It's just, I'm cold, sweetie," she lied, her voice a thin, reedy sound she barely recognized. "I'm going to get a sweater." She fled to her room, locking the door, and sank to the floor, her back against the wood. She couldn't breathe. He saw her. He knew where she was. He knew about Leo. She was still there an hour later, curled in on herself, when a sharp, authoritative knock echoed on the door. "Harper, open the door." "Dominic." She didn't move. "Harper." The handle jiggled, then she heard the click of a key. He had a master. The door swung open and he stood there, his face a mask of stone. He had clearly been in his study, as he'd shed his suit jacket, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing the scarred forearms she had last seen in his kitchen. "Leo is with Mrs. Petrov," he said, his voice quiet, dangerously quiet. "He said you were sick. You are not sick. You are terrified." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You've been avoiding me for 3 days, and now you are hiding. What happened?" It was not a question. I'm just tired," she whispered, her gaze fixed on the floor. "Look at me." She refused. He crouched in front of her, a powerful, imposing figure that blocked out the light from the hallway. He did not touch her. He simply waited. "You are trembling," he said, his voice dropping. "I have not seen you tremble like this since you told me about your ex-boyfriend, the one who was released 3 weeks ago." Her head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock and betrayal. You checked on me?" "I protect what is mine," he stated, his voice flat. "And you, Harper, are in my home, under my protection." He saw the crumpled envelope clutched in her hand. "What is that?" She said nothing. He held out his hand. She slowly, numbly, gave it to him. He read the note. Once, twice. The stillness that came over him was more terrifying than any rage. The muscle in his jaw locked. He rose to his full height, the flimsy paper crushed in his fist. "His name," Dominic said, his voice a low growl. "Please don't," she begged, scrambling to her feet. You don't understand." "He's crazy. He's obsessive. If you provoke him—" "His name, Mark," she whispered, tears finally breaking free, hot and angry. "Mark Jennings, but I can handle it. I can leave. I'll pack my things. I'll disappear. He wants me. He doesn't want you or Leo. I just need to go." "You are going nowhere." He turned and strode out of the room. She followed him, stumbling down the hall to his study. He was already on the phone. "Sal, lock it down, full protocols, no one in or out of the estate. I want eyes on every perimeter." He paused, listening. "The threat is internal. Someone let it in." He hung up and turned to Mrs. Petrov, who had appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Who delivered the mail?" "A new service, sir, and one of the new maids." "Fire them." Dominic cut her off, his voice like ice. "Fire the gate guard who let the car in. Fire the maid who touched the envelope. Cancel the delivery service. I want everyone who worked this morning terminated. You have 1 hour to replace the perimeter team with my personal detail. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mr. Romano," the housekeeper whispered, and vanished. Dominic turned back to Harper. She was shaking, her hand over her mouth. He saw not just her fear, but her shame. "He will not get near you, Harper," he said, his voice raw. "You don't understand." She sobbed. "He's not like you. He's not organized. He's just chaos. He likes to break things. He told me he'd rather see me dead than see me with someone else. I can't put you and Leo in that danger." "You are not putting anyone in danger." He crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping her upper arms. His hold was firm, grounding. I brought you into this world. I put a target on your back by letting you near me." His admission hung in the air. He blamed himself. "I will eliminate the threat," he vowed. "Eliminate," she whispered, the word's true meaning hitting her. No, I don't want you to kill him. I just want him to go away." Dominic's expression softened, a deep, aching pity in his eyes. "In my world, Harper, those are the same thing." He released her, his face hardening again. "Pack a bag, for you and Leo. We are leaving." For the next 2 weeks, they lived like ghosts. They did not stay at the estate. Dominic moved them constantly, a fluid, paranoid rotation of safe houses known only to him and his most trusted men. The first stop was a sterile, high-tech apartment in a downtown skyscraper, its walls all glass, offering a god's-eye view of the city. The 3 of them, plus 2 silent guards posted in the lobby. The roles of boss and nanny evaporated, stripped away by the shared, pressurized confinement. Nanny. They were just Dominic, Harper, and Leo. They cooked together in the small, modern kitchen. They watched movies on the sofa. Leo once again a warm, sleepy presence between them. Dominic, cut off from his daily operations, focused solely on them. He taught Leo how to play chess, his patience seemingly infinite. He would sit and watch as Harper read to his son, his gaze a heavy, warm weight on her. They moved again, to a sprawling, isolated ranch in the hills north of Malibu, the air smelling of dust and sagebrush. Here, Leo could run. And here, the proximity became undeniable. They were in the living room, a cavernous space with a cold fireplace. Leo was asleep in the next room, the door ajar. Dominic's men were on the perimeter, leaving the main house to them. It was late, the wind howling outside. "He's checking in with his parole officer," Dominic said quietly from the armchair where he was reading a report. Harper looked up from the sofa, her book forgotten in her lap. "You found him." "We found him the same day you got the note. He's in a motel in Van Nuys. My men are watching his every move." "Then, why are we here? Why are we hiding if you know where he is?" "Because," Dominic said, setting the report aside, "I need to know why he found you. He's a small-time thug. He shouldn't have the resources to find you here. He's being helped." The fear returned, sharp and cold. Who would help him? Dominic just watched her, his expression grim. He didn't have the answer yet, but he would. He stood and walked to the window, staring out into the blackness. "You are safe here," he said, his back to her. "Am I?" she whispered. He turned. The silence stretched, filled with the howl of the wind and the unsaid words of the last 2 weeks, the memory of their kiss, the dance, his gentleness, her fear. He crossed to the sofa. He did not sit, but knelt before her, just as he had in the mountain cabin when he'd tended her ankle. He took her hands. They were cold. "I will not let him touch you." "Harper." "That's what you keep saying." she said, her voice trembling. "But I am so tired of being afraid." "Then don't be," he said, his voice a low vibration. "Be angry." He lifted one of her hands and pressed his lips to her knuckles. It was a gesture of fealty, of reverence. It was not the kiss of a boss or even of a lover. It was a promise. When he looked up, his eyes were dark, all pretense gone. "I missed you," he whispered. "These last few weeks, I've tried to stay away, to respect the lines you drew. I drew them because I was afraid," she confessed. "Afraid of what you'd think of me, that I was broken." "Broken?" He let out a harsh breath. "Harper, you are the strongest person I have ever known." He leaned in, his gaze fixed on her mouth. "Is this okay?" he asked, his voice rough. She gave a small, jerky nod. He kissed her. It was nothing like the first time. There was no tentative tenderness. This was a kiss of desperation, of 2 weeks of shared fear and confinement. It was a claiming. His lips were firm, demanding, and she met his pressure, her hands sliding from his to cup his face, her fingers digging into his jaw. A low sound rumbled in his chest. He rose from his knees, bringing her with him, pulling her up so she was standing against him, his arms a steel band around her waist. He deepened the kiss, his tongue tracing her lips, and she opened for him, a small gasp escaping her. This was not a mistake. This was an inevitability. His hands moved, one tangled in her hair, tilting her head back, the other sliding down her back, pressing her hips flush against his. She could feel the hard ridge of his arousal, the solid, thumping beat of his heart against her chest. He broke the kiss, only to trail his mouth along her jaw, down her neck, his breath hot against her skin. "Harper," he breathed, his voice thick. His fingers found the hem of her simple t-shirt. He hesitated, his hands resting on her waist, his thumbs brushing her skin just beneath the fabric. He was asking permission again. She gave it by nodding, her eyes closing, her head falling back. His touch was not rushed. It was worshipful. He slowly, deliberately, pulled the shirt up and over her head, his gaze following the movement. She stood before him in the dim light, in her jeans and a simple bra, trembling. He looked at her, not with hunger, but with a kind of awe. "You are beautiful," he whispered. He reached out, his fingers unsteady, and traced the line of her collarbone, his touch sending a shiver through her entire body. He bent, pressing a soft, reverent kiss to the hollow of her throat. His hands moved to the button of her jeans. He undid it, then the zipper, his movements agonizingly slow. He slid them down her hips, kneeling before her again as they pooled at her feet. She stepped out of them, her breath catching. He stayed there, on his knees, his gaze traveling up her body. He saw her, all of her. He saw the small, faded scar on her hip from a childhood fall. He saw the way she trembled under his gaze, not from fear of him, but from a terrifying, electric anticipation. He rose, his hands sliding up her ribs, his thumbs brushing the underside of her breasts. He leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. The intensity in the room was suffocating. It was too much. The danger outside, the vulnerability inside. It was a moment balanced on the edge of a knife. He stopped. He just held her, his body rigid, his breathing ragged. "I will not," he breathed, his voice shaking with the effort of his control. "I will not take you in fear, not when he is out there, not when this could be a reaction to him." Harper opened her eyes, tears welling. He was giving her an escape. He was protecting her, even from himself. She buried her face in his neck, her arms locking around him. "It's not," she whispered, her voice muffled. "It's not because of him. It's because of you." She pulled back, her hands on his chest. "I have to tell you, I need you to know. I don't want to be chosen just because of Leo. I don't want to be a convenient mother, or a replacement for your wife." Dominic's expression, which had been tight with passion, softened into something she had never seen before. He cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "Elena is a memory," he said, his voice raw. Leo opened the door. He showed me what was missing. But you, Harper, you are the one who walked through. You are not a replacement. You are a resurrection. You remind me what it means to feel, what it means to want to protect." He kissed her, softly this time. "I'm falling in love with you, Harper Lane, not because of my son, but because you are the only person who has ever looked at my world and not been afraid of me, but been afraid for me." She cried then, a quiet, cathartic release. He held her, simply held her, stroking her hair. The moment was broken by the harsh buzz of his satellite phone. He ignored it. It buzzed again. "It's Sal," he said, his voice hardening as he looked at the screen. He released her, grabbing a blanket from the sofa and wrapping it around her shoulders before answering, "What?" He listened, his face turning to granite. "Say that again." He was silent for a full minute, his gaze finding Harper's. "I see. Find out where the meat is. I want a full team." "No, not a full team. I want a trap, and I want to be there." He hung up. "They found him," Harper said, her voice small. "They found who he's working with," Dominic corrected, his voice lethal. "He wasn't just funded. He was given locations. Our locations. The mountain house. This ranch." "Who?" "Vanessa Hale." The name landed like a stone. The redhead from the mountain. The woman who had told her to know her place. She's helping him. She contacted him, fed him information, money. She wanted him to scare you away, or worse. She wanted revenge for the humiliation. Harper's fear, which had receded, came rushing back, but this time it was different. It was cold, hard anger, the anger Dominic had told her to find. "I'm done," she said, her voice clear and strong. She stood, pulling the blanket tight around her. "I am done hiding. I am done being afraid of him, or of her. I will not let them chase me out of your life, or out of Leo's life." Dominic watched her, a new, fierce pride in his eyes. He saw the foster kid who had survived. He saw the nanny who had slid down a ravine. He saw the woman who stood before him, ready to fight. He walked to her, taking her face in his hands. "You are right. We are not running anymore." He kissed her forehead, a promise sealed. "No one will ever touch you again." He turned and picked up the phone. "Sal, change of plans. Find out where they are meeting. We are not just watching. We are ending this. Tonight." The trap was set with the lethal precision of a spider's web. Dominic, moving with a quiet fury Harper had never seen, orchestrated the entire play from the ranch. The leak was simple. A trusted man, posing as a disgruntled guard, let it slip to one of Vanessa's known informants that Dominic Romano was panicking. He was moving the nanny, sending her out of the country on a private jet to keep her safe while he dealt with the fallout. The flight was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the morning from a private hangar at the Santa Monica airport. It was a trap designed to appeal to both their weaknesses, Vanessa's arrogance and Mark's obsessive need for a final confrontation. "You are not coming," Dominic had stated, his voice flat, as he checked the magazine of a handgun he had no intention of using. It was for appearance, for a world she was not part of. "I am," Harper said from the sofa, where she sat, dressed in jeans and a dark sweater. She was not trembling. Her voice was low and steady. I've been running from him since I was 21. If I hide in this house while you handle him, I'll still be running. I will not live in his shadow. I have to be the one to end it." Dominic looked at her, truly looked at her. He saw the foster kid who had survived, the nanny who had slid down a ravine, and the woman who had stood trembling in his arms. She was right. This was not his fight to finish. It was hers to win. "You will stay in the observation room," he said, his voice a low command. "You will be flanked by 2 of my men. You will not move. You will not make a sound until I say it is over. Am I clear?" "Clear," she said. The hangar was a vast, cavernous space, smelling of jet fuel and the cool, damp ocean air. It was dark, the only light coming from the faint green glow of the instrument panels on the empty Learjet parked in the center of the floor. Rain hammered a frantic rhythm on the tin roof. Harper stood in the observation office, a glass-walled box 1 story above the hangar floor. Dominic was beside her, a solid, warm presence in the shadows. His gaze was not on her, but on the roll-up door at the far end of the building. Sal, his advisor, stood at the other end of the office, speaking quietly into a radio. Harper's heart pounded against her ribs, a dull, heavy beat. She could feel the vibration of Dominic's tension beside her, a stillness so absolute it was more powerful than any movement. "They're here," Sal whispered. A black sedan, its headlights off, rolled silently through the partially open service door and stopped. The engine cut, plunging the hangar back into a near-total silence, broken only by the rain. The car doors opened. Vanessa Hale emerged first. She was dressed in a black trench coat, her red hair a slash of color in the gloom. She looked smug, her face tilted up toward the jet, a victorious smile playing on her lips. Then the passenger door opened. "Mark!" Harper's breath hitched, a small, involuntary gasp. Dominic's hand found the small of her back, a steady, grounding pressure. Mark looked different, thinner. His movements were jerky, agitated, his gaze darting around the dark hangar. He looked like a cornered animal. This was the man who had haunted her nightmares, the man whose voice could still make her skin crawl. "They're arguing," Dominic murmured. His eyes narrowed. Even from a distance, they could see the dynamic. Vanessa was pointing at the jet, giving orders. Mark was shaking his head, gesturing angrily back at the car. He was the muscle, but she was the one in charge. Finally, she handed him a thick envelope, and he shoved it into his jacket. Appeased. "They're moving," Sal said. Vanessa and Mark began walking toward the jet, their footsteps echoing in the huge, empty space. They were expecting a handover, expecting to see Harper led out in defeat. They were 20 feet from the plane when it happened. Clack, 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 whump! A bank of industrial floodlights snapped on, illuminating the center of the hangar in a sudden, brutal, artificial daylight. Vanessa and Mark froze, throwing their hands up to shield their eyes, from the shadows behind the jet, from the service tunnels, from the side offices. 6 men emerged. They moved silently, fanning out, creating a perfect, inescapable circle. They wore simple black uniforms, their presence professional and deeply intimidating. Vanessa dropped her hand, her eyes wide with shock, her smugness evaporating. "What is this? Who are you?" Mark spun around, his hand flying to his jacket pocket, but he froze when he saw he was completely, hopelessly surrounded. The metal door of the observation office opened. The sound of their footsteps on the steel staircase was the only sound in the hangar. Clang, clang, clang. Vanessa and Mark turned. Dominic and Harper stopped at the bottom of the stairs, bathed in the harsh light. Vanessa's face contorted, twisting from shock into a mask of pure, reptilian hatred. "You," she spat, her voice echoing, "the nanny, you think you can—" "It's over, Vanessa," Dominic said, his voice quiet, but it carried across the concrete floor. Mark's eyes found Harper. His entire body went rigid. The agitation, the confusion, and it all burned away, replaced by a toxic, possessive recognition. "Annie," he breathed. A sick, familiar smile spread across his face. "You look good, baby. Real good, playing princess in a glass castle." Harper felt a wave of nausea, the old, familiar fear. She felt Dominic's hand on her back, his strength flowing into her. She took a step forward. He let her go, but stayed half a pace behind, a silent guardian. "My name is not Annie," she said. Her voice shook, but she didn't care. "Oh, come on, Annie, don't be like that," Mark said, taking a step toward her. Sal and another man moved, but Dominic held up a hand, stopping them. This was Harper's. "You left me," Mark said, his voice taking on a wounded, pleading tone. The one he always used before the rage. "You ran away. I just wanted to talk. I just wanted to find you." He pointed a trembling finger at Vanessa. This bitch. She found me. She told me you were here. She said this. This man," he spat the word at Dominic, "was holding you, that he was touching you." "She paid you," Harper said, her voice growing stronger. "She paid you to get rid of me, to hurt me. To what? Blackmail him? He was mine," Vanessa shrieked, her composure completely gone. "The merger, my family, our future. You are nothing, you are the help. You ruined everything." "He was never yours," Harper said, her gaze steady. "And Leo was never a part of your business deal." She turned her full attention back to Mark. This was it. The demon from her past, standing 10 feet away, illuminated. "Annie, listen to me," Mark said, his voice dropping, trying to pull her back into his web. "Let's just go. Walk away from these freaks. Just you and me. We can go. Right now. It's always been you and me. You know that." He even managed a small, sad smile. She looked at him. She saw the man who had broken her apartment door, the man who had taken her car keys, the man who had told her she was worthless, that no one else would ever want her. And she felt nothing. The fear was gone. The terror that had lived in her stomach for 5 years, it just evaporated under the harsh hangar lights. He was not a monster. He was just a small, weak, pathetic man. She took a deep breath, the smell of the rain and jet fuel filling her lungs. "You don't get to call me that. My name is Harper." Her voice was clear, and it did not shake. "You don't get to tell me what to do. You don't get to touch me, and you don't get to own me. I am not afraid of you, not anymore." The rejection, the finality of it, shattered his manipulative calm. His face contorted. If he couldn't have her, no one would. He lunged. He was fast, his body coiled with a wiry, desperate strength. He lunged not at Dominic, but at her. He never had a chance. Dominic moved with a speed that was almost supernatural. He was a shadow, a blur. He intercepted Mark mid-stride, not with a punch, but with a calculated, brutal efficiency. He sidestepped the wild swing, grabbed Mark's arm, and used his own momentum to slam him, face first, into the side of the black sedan. The sound of Mark's head hitting the metal was a sickening, hollow thud. Dominic didn't stop. He spun him around, slamming his back against the car, his left forearm pressing hard against Mark's throat, lifting him up onto his toes, cutting off his air. Mark's hands clawed uselessly at Dominic's arm. Dominic's face was an inch from his. His voice was not a yell. It was a low, terrifying whisper that shook with a controlled, lethal fury. "I gave you a chance," he hissed, the words a staccato rhythm against the rain. "I let you walk. I let you breathe. You will never look at her again." He pressed harder, Mark's face turning a dusky purple. "You will never think of her again." He leaned in, his voice dropping so low only Mark could hear it. "Touch her again and you die." He released his hold. Mark collapsed to the concrete, a boneless heap, choking, gasping, and sobbing. Harper stood frozen, her hand over her mouth. The roar of engines filled the hangar, not the sedan, something else. 2 black government-style cars, lights flashing but no sirens, swept into the hangar and stopped. Men in dark suits stepped out. Vanessa, who'd been watching in silent horror, saw them and seemed to find her voice. "You can't do this. You don't know who my father is. I'll have all of you." Sal stepped forward, cutting her off. He handed a slim folder to the lead agent. "Mr. Sal." The agent said, a formal nod. "Agent Harris, you'll find everything you need in there." Sal said, "Interstate wire fraud, conspiracy to commit blackmail, witness tampering, and of course, a clear violation of Mr. Jennings' parole." "Wait, no, he can't," Vanessa sputtered. "Your father's businesses. Miss Hale," Sal continued, his voice smooth, "entered a federal investigation for racketeering. Effective about 30 minutes ago. His assets are frozen. Your phone calls were all logged." "No!" she screamed. Agent Harris gestured to his men. "Take them." Vanessa was cuffed, her face a mask of disbelief and rage. Mark was hauled to his feet, his hands cuffed behind his back, his head hanging in defeat. They were put in separate cars. It was swift. It was quiet. It was terrifyingly legal. Dominic's influence was not just street level. It ran deep. The cars drove away, their taillights disappearing into the rain. The hangar was quiet again. The floodlights snapped off. Harper was shaking, the adrenaline draining away, leaving her cold and weak. Dominic was at her side in an instant. His hands were on her arms, his gaze frantic, searching her face. "Are you hurt? Did he—" "I'm okay." she whispered. "I'm okay." He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her in a desperate, crushing embrace. He buried his face in her hair, his body trembling with the receding tide of his own violence. "It's over," he breathed against her temple. "It's done. He will never, ever get near you again." She held on to him, her face pressed against the solid, warm wall of his chest. She was safe. She was finally safe. They returned to the estate as the sun was beginning to stain the sky a bruised purple and gray. The house was silent. Leo was asleep. The threat was gone. Harper stood in her room, the one with the pale blue walls, and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She looked the same, but everything was different. She should have felt relief. She should have felt joy. She felt hollow. She thought of the hangar, the cold, precise way Dominic had neutralized her past, the arrival of the federal agents, the casual way Sal had dismantled Vanessa's entire life, her family, her future, in less than 30 seconds. This was Dominic's world, a world of power so absolute it could erase people. Vanessa's shriek echoed in her mind. "You ruined everything." Had she? She'd walked into this house, a simple nanny, and in her wake, a 6-month business merger was destroyed. A powerful family was under federal investigation. She had brought her own darkness, her own broken past, into this home. She'd put Leo in the middle of it. She had been the target. Dominic had fallen for her. But he was a boss. He needed a queen, someone strong, someone from his world, not her, not a damaged girl from the foster system who came with a psychotic ex-boyfriend. She was a liability. Her love for him, her love for Leo, it was a selfish thing. It would hurt them. It would damage his reputation, his standing. It would put his son's future at risk. She had to do the one thing she was good at, the one thing her entire life had trained her for. She had to run, not from a monster, but for the people she loved. She pulled her old, worn suitcase from the top of the wardrobe. Her hands were steady. This was a different kind of survival. This was a sacrifice. She began to pack, folding her simple clothes, her movements methodical. Tears tracked silently down her cheeks, dripping onto the few things she owned. This was harder than facing Mark. This was leaving home. She was zipping the bag, the sound obscenely loud in the quiet room, when a small, sleepy voice broke the silence. "Are you going on a trip?" Harper spun around, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a sob. Leo was standing in her doorway, his bare feet silent on the carpet. He was clutching his worn stuffed bear, his dark hair a messy halo, his eyes blurry with sleep. "Leo?" she whispered, her voice breaking. She frantically wiped her face. "Hey, sweetie, you're up early. Go back to bed. Why are you crying?" He stepped into the room. He saw the suitcase. His sleepiness vanished. His eyes went wide, his small body tensing. It was a look she knew. It was the look he'd had when she first arrived, the look of a child bracing for abandonment. "Where are you going?" he whispered. "Leo, I just... You're leaving?" It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. His lip began to tremble. Like my first mommy left. "No, oh, Leo, no, baby, it's not like that." She knelt, pulling him to her. "It's not. I have to go. Is it because of the bad lady?" he choked out. "Papa stopped her. He said he would." "He did, sweetie. He did. It's not that. It's just, I'm not good for you. I'm not good for your papa." "Yes, you are," he cried, his voice cracking. The silent, stoic boy was gone, replaced by a child consumed by grief. "You're my garden, you're my strawberries, you're my stories." He wrapped his arms around her neck, clinging to her with a desperate strength. "You can't go. Please, Harper, you can't." He buried his face in her shoulder, his small body shaking with huge, gasping sobs, the kind he used to have in his nightmares. "Please be my mommy," he wailed, his voice muffled against her skin. "Please, don't leave me. Please be my mommy." Harper was shattered. She held him, her own body shaking, her tears soaking his hair. She had no words. She had no defense. "She already is." The voice came from the doorway. It was quiet, rough with exhaustion. and utterly final. Dominic was standing there. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked like he hadn't slept in a year, but his eyes were only on her. He walked into the room. He didn't look at the suitcase. He crouched down, placing one large, gentle hand on his son's shaking back. "Leo, shh, look at me." Leo turned his tear-streaked face from Harper's shoulder. "Papa," he sobbed. "She's leaving, like—" "She is not leaving," Dominic said, his voice an unbreakable promise. He looked at Harper, over their son's head. His eyes were soft, pained. He understood. He understood everything. He understood why she was packing, the fear, the self-sacrifice. "She's just confused," Dominic said, his gaze locked with hers. He stood, walking to the offending suitcase. He placed his hand on it, then quietly, firmly, pushed it back into the closet and shut the door. He turned back to her, and to the boy still clinging to her. "You are not leaving," he said to her, his voice low. "You are not a liability. Harper, you are not damage. You are everything." He knelt again, so the three of them were on the same level. He put one arm around her and one around his son, pulling them together. Leo was pressed between them, a bridge of warmth. "You're right," Dominic said, his voice thick with an emotion he no longer tried to hide. "This world, my world, it's not for you. You are too good for it. You are what's been missing." He looked at Leo, then back at Harper. "He knows it, and I know it." He took her hand, the one that wasn't holding Leo, and raised it to his lips. "Don't run from us." She looked at him, the mafia boss, the killer, the father, and she looked at the little boy who had called her Mama. She shook her head. A single final movement. "I'm not running," she whispered. He pulled them closer. His two worlds, his old life and his new one, colliding in his arms. He rested his chin on Leo's head, his eyes closed. He was home. The press conference was Dominic's idea. It was a declaration of war, disguised as a celebration of love. He did not choose a neutral venue. He held it in the cold, marble foyer of the Romano estate, the very heart of his power, a place that had once been a symbol of isolation and was now the backdrop for his ultimate reclamation. Harper stood beside him, her hand gripping his, her knuckles white. She wore a simple, elegant dark blue dress, one he had insisted on buying for her. The room, which she had only ever seen silent and empty, was now a blinding sea of flashing camera bulbs and shouted questions. It was terrifying, an assault of noise and light. She felt like a fraud, the nanny who had tricked the king. "Mr. Romano," a reporter yelled. "Is it true the Vitali merger is dead? Mr. Romano, what is your response to the federal investigation into the Hale family assets?" Dominic stood at the podium, a figure of absolute, immovable calm. He did not tap the microphone. He did not raise his voice. He simply waited. The room, sensing his power, gradually fell silent. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice a low, amplified rumble that filled the cavernous space. "I have not called you here to discuss my business, which remains, as always, secure. I have called you here to discuss my life." He turned, his gaze softening as it landed on Harper. He took her hand, the one he was already holding, and lifted it. Drawing her firmly to his side, the cameras exploded. "For 3 years, this house has been a place of mourning," he said, his voice resonating. "Today it is a home. I am announcing my engagement to Miss Harper Lane." A wave of stunned silence, followed by a frantic burst of questions. "Miss Lane," one journalist shouted, her voice dripping with skepticism. "Isn't she your son's nanny?" Harper flinched. She felt the sting of the word, the implication. Nanny, the help. Dominic turned his gaze on that reporter. His eyes went flat, cold and lethal, the look he had given Mark in the hangar. The reporter visibly shrank. "Miss Lane," Dominic said, his voice dangerously soft, "is the woman who saved my son. She's the woman who saved me. She's my partner, my equal, and the future matriarch of this family. She's under my full and absolute protection. any disrespect shown to her. He let his gaze sweep the room. Is disrespect shown to me? And I do not tolerate disrespect. There will be no further questions. He clicked off the microphone, took Harper's hand, and led her away from the podium, his men moving to block the surge of reporters. Later that night, she stood on the balcony of his room, the city lights a galaxy below them. She was trembling. Dominic, I don't know if I can do this. The lights, the way they looked at me, they hate me. They think I'm a gold digger, a decoration. Dominic came up behind her. He didn't touch her, but she felt the heat of his body. What they think is irrelevant. But this world, your world, she whispered, it's too much. I don't fit. He moved then, turning her to face him. He took her hands, his gaze firm and unwavering. You are not walking into my world, Harper. He held her hands tighter. A vow. We are building a new one, together. That. He nodded toward the chaotic lights of the city. Is their world. It does not touch us. Their wedding was not for the elite. It was not for the papers. It was for them. They were married 3 weeks later, not in the cold foyer, but in the garden. The secret garden. The strawberries were ripe, and the roses Harper had salvaged were in full, defiant bloom. The sky was a perfect, clear Los Angeles blue. The guest list was small. There was no one from society. Sal was there, standing beside Dominic, his face uncharacteristically soft. Mrs. Petrov, who now looked at Harper with a fierce, maternal pride, stood as her witness. 6 of Dominic's most loyal guards, the men who had been with him in the hangar, stood at the perimeter, their suits immaculate, their presence a silent, protective wall. And then there was Leo. He wore a small black tuxedo, identical to his father's. His dark hair was slicked back, and he held his role with a profound, 5-year-old seriousness. The music began. A simple cello piece, the same one they had danced to. Harper appeared at the edge of the lawn. She wore a simple, cream-colored dress that left her shoulders bare. She was radiant, her face free of fear. Leo walked to her. He took her hand, his small fingers gripping hers tightly. He looked up at her, his dark eyes shining with an unspeakable pride. "Mama," he whispered, "you look like a queen." He walked her down the aisle of grass, past the roses, and delivered her to his father. He formally shook Dominic's hand, then went to stand beside Sal, his chest puffed out. Dominic took her hands. He looked as if he was seeing the sun for the first time. "I wrote vows," he said, his voice thick, "but they are useless." He looked at her, his eyes tracing every feature of her face. "Harper, I was a ghost. I was a man living in a tomb, bound by duty and by grief. I thought strength was silence. I thought power was isolation. You walked into my house, and you showed me that true strength is quiet. It's gentle. It's the courage to climb down into the ravine." A tear slipped down her cheek. He brushed it away with his thumb. "You are not my decoration. Harper, you are my foundation. You are my heart. And you are my home. I vow to be your shield. I vow to be your equal. I vow to spend the rest of my life being worthy of the safety you have made me feel." Harper was crying openly now, a soft, happy sound. "Dominic," she whispered, her hands trembling in his. "I came here with nothing. I had spent my entire life building walls, just trying to survive. I thought a home was just a place to lock the door. You and Leo, you taught me that a home is not a place. It's a feeling. It's safety. You looked at my past, at my scars, and you were not afraid. You saw me." She smiled, a brilliant, watery smile. "I vow to be your peace. I vow to be your partner. I vow to love you and to love our son with every single piece of me, forever. I am not afraid anymore." He slid the simple diamond band onto her finger. The kiss was not a performance. It was a seal. It was a long, slow, deep promise, and Leo's cheer was the only sound that broke the sacred silence. Her dream, the one she had confessed to him, was not forgotten. 3 months later, she stood in front of a small, unassuming brick building in a part of the city the elite never visited. The sign over the door read, "Lane House, a foundation for new beginnings. Dominic stood beside her, not as a boss, but as her husband, his arm around her waist. His wealth, once used for power and control, had funded the entire operation. It was a community center, a safe house, and a legal aid clinic for women and children escaping abusive situations. "Is it what you pictured?" he asked. "It's more," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. She was helping them. The girls like her, the ones who had run with nothing but $20 and a bus ticket. She was giving them a home. Their new life was built on these small, quiet revolutions. Dominic retired. He did not disappear, but he stepped back from active leadership of the Familia. He called Sal to his study, the room that had once been his father's throne room. "It's yours," Dominic said simply. Sal, who had served the Romano family his entire life, was stunned. "Boss, Dominic, you can't. The coalition is stable, but you are the most capable man I know, Sal," Dominic said. "You know the business, but I have a new business." He was handing over an empire, not because he was weak, but because he was finally strong enough to choose. He wanted peace. He wanted to watch his son play in the garden. He wanted to dance with his wife. The final piece slotted into place on a quiet Tuesday. Harper and Dominic were in his study, but the room was different. The severe, abstract art was gone. In its place was a large, framed piece of paper. It was a crayon drawing, a large, smiling man, a woman with brown hair, also smiling, and a small boy between them, holding both their hands. Underneath, in wobbly letters, it read, "Mommy, Daddy, me." The adoption papers were on the desk. Leo, who had insisted on being there, looked at the final line. The lawyer had explained it twice. "It says Leo Romano," Leo said, his brow furrowed. He picked up the pen. "That's your name." "Sweetie," Harper said gently. "No," Leo said. He crossed out Romano with a fierce, black scribble. He looked at Harper, his eyes full of a love so powerful it was a physical force. "I want your name. I want to be Leo Lane." Harper's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Leo, but your father." She looked at Dominic. He was not angry. He was not insulted by the rejection of his legacy. He was looking at his son with an overwhelming sense of pride. He had raised a boy who didn't care about power or names or legacy. He cared about love. "If he wants to be Leo Lane," Dominic said, his voice thick, "then he is Leo Lane." That night, Harper came out of the shower, pulling a silk robe around her. Dominic was waiting in their bedroom. The lights were low. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, watching her. "He's asleep," he said. "He wrote his new name on all his drawings, Leo Lane. He's so proud of it," Harper whispered, walking toward him. "He's proud of you." Dominic stood, taking her hands. He pulled her closer, his gaze heavy, filled with the quiet passion that now defined them. "As am I." He undressed her slowly, his hands reverent. The robe fell away. He didn't just look at her body. He looked at her story. His fingers gently traced the silvery, faded scar on her ribs, a relic from Mark's rage. She tensed, the old instinct to hide. "Shh," he whispered. He bent his head and his lips, warm and soft, pressed against the scar. She gasped, a small, broken sound. He kissed the faint mark on her shoulder next. "I see you, Harper," he murmured against her skin, his breath hot. "I see all of it. This is not damage. This is a testament. This is your strength." He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms locking around his neck. He held her, his equal, his wife. He laid her on the bed. His touch was not demanding. It was a form of worship. He kissed her mouth, her jaw, her throat. He memorized her with his hands. This was not the desperate, frantic passion of the safe house. This was the deep, slow, confident love of a marriage. It was the rhythm of two souls who had found their other half, a final, complete surrender to a safety that was absolute. He moved within her, a slow, perfect union. He was hers, and she was his. There were no more walls, no more locks, no more running. Later. They lay tangled in the sheets, the moon high outside, casting a silver light into the room. She was curled against his chest, her head over his heart, listening to the steady, strong beat. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "Me neither," he murmured. He smiled, kissing the top of her head. He picked her up, wrapping her in a soft cashmere blanket, and carried her out of the room. He took her down to the garden. The air was cool, smelling of night-blooming jasmine and damp earth. The stars were bright, diamonds scattered on black velvet. He set her down, but kept her wrapped in the blanket, in his arms. He began to sway, humming the tune of the cello piece from their wedding. They slow danced in the middle of the garden, barefoot on the cool grass. A small sound made them pause, a giggle. Leo was sitting on the steps of the patio, wide awake, clutching his bear. He wasn't crying, he wasn't scared, he was just watching them, a look of pure, unadulterated joy on his face. "Go to sleep, Leon," Dominic called out, his voice soft. "I'm watching the stars." Leo laughed. Dominic looked at Harper. He brushed the hair from her face, his eyes reflecting the starlight. She was safe. He was free. Their son was laughing in the background. He pulled her close, and they danced. A silent, perfect family, finally and completely secured. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We are so grateful to have you as part of our community. We would love to hear from you. Please comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more content just like this. And finally, we would love to know what you thought of Dominic, Harper, and Leo's journey, so please share your thoughts in English in the comments.